because I expected all of us to win because, we're the winning tribe. But good try. Good try. Okay. If you know me, I'm not much I don't like speaking in public, but when I do, I'm just prepared a month ahead. But I believe God really likes to stretch our limits and change and move to get his word across. And I'm very excited for what he has planned tonight. So before we jump in, can we all just pray? Lord, I thank you that we can come here. Lord, I pray that you just move tonight. Lord, I pray that anything that is from me will fall away and then it will just be you speaking through me. Lord, I pray that you will just feel free to do what you want to do. In Jesus' name I pray, amen. Okay, so like you might have seen, my topic today is restore. I'm actually going through 4 short stories, hopefully they're short. First I want to talk about what the meaning of the word restore is. So restore, as by Google, is bring back or re-establish. So I just want you to keep that in mind as we keep going through. So we're going to jump straight into it. In 2 Kings 4, 1-7, it says, "The wife of a man from the company of the prophets cried out to Elisha, 'Your servant, my husband, is dead, and you know he revered the Lord. But now his creditor is coming to take my 2 boys as his slaves.' Elisha replied to her, 'How can I help you? Tell me what to do. What do you have in your house?' 'Your servant has nothing there at all,' she said, 'except a small jar of oil.' Elisha said, 'Go around and ask all your neighbors for empty jars. Don't ask for just a few. Then go inside and shut the door behind you and your sons. Pour the oil into the jars, and as each is filled, put it to one side.' She left him and shut the door behind her and her sons, and they brought the jars to her, and she kept pouring. When all the jars were full, she said to her son, 'Bring me another one.' But he replied, 'There is not a jar left.' Then the oil stopped flowing. She went and told the man of God, and he said, 'Go sell the oil and pay your debts. You and your sons can live on what's left.'" So this lady is about to lose her sons because she has no money. Her husband died. She's possibly in one of the worst financial states ever. She's like, "I have nothing." And then she remembers, oh wait, I have a small jar of oil. And honestly, when I pictured this, I always picture her finding this really tiny jar under the sink behind the pipes, which obviously can't happen because there was no plumbing. But it wasn't big. And by any human logic, it doesn't make any sense to mention it. But she was like, "It's small, but maybe it'll work." And she trusted God. I'm glad I'm not Elisha, because I'd probably be like, that's going to get you $3. Good luck. Say goodbye to your sons. But Elisha didn't see a small jar. He saw a big God who restores. I only recently noticed that the last line says, "Sell your oil and pay your debts, and you and your sons can live on what's left." I just want to emphasize, from this small jar of oil, she was able to pay her debts off and have more. And her debt was clearly a lot, because they weren't just going to take one of her sons, they were going to take both to work and pay off that debt. But she would have had enough money to live comfortably for the rest of her life, and she had no other source of income. When you give God what little you have left from your need, He will restore you in full and bless you, because it's His nature. The second story comes from Mark 6:34-44. And it says, "When Jesus landed and saw a large crowd, He had compassion on them, because they were like sheep without a shepherd. So he began teaching them many things. By this time, it was late in the day, and his disciples came to him and said, "This is a remote place, and it is already very late. Send the people away so they can go to the surrounding countryside and villages and buy themselves something to eat." But he answered, "You give them something to eat." Then they said to him, "That would take more than half a year's wages, and are we to go and spend that much on bread and give it to them to eat?" "How many loaves do you have?" he asked. "Go and see." When they found out, they said, 5 and 2 fish. Jesus directed them to have all the people sit down in groups on the grass. They sat down in groups of hundreds and fifties. Taking the loaves and the 2 fish, looking up to heaven, he gave thanks and broke the loaves. Then he gave it to the disciples to distribute to the people, and he also divided the fish among them. They were all ate and were satisfied, and the disciples picked up 12 basketfuls of broken pieces of bread and fish, and the number of men who ate were 5,000. I love how Jesus just kind of ignores their complaints. They're like, "Oh, it's going to cost so much money. We're not going to be able to do this." And it's almost like Jesus just turns to a different disciple, and he's like, "What do you have?" They had 5 loaves and 2 fish. I love thinking about this story from the perspective of the little boy. I can almost imagine he's like trying to get close to Jesus, trying to hear what he's saying, or even just see him. And he hears them talking, and he hears the complaining of the disciples that we don't have enough money, we don't have food, we don't have this, we don't have that. And I can almost imagine at that moment he looks down and he's like, "Well, I have food. It's not much, but if Jesus needs it, I'm going to give it to him." Children can be so simple sometimes, and they surprise you often. And this kid didn't think, "Oh, I'm going to get something back. I'm going to do this because everyone will know who I am." He did it because he wanted to help Jesus and his ministry. And I personally believe that it is the heart of that little boy that counted for the miracle. Jesus used the little that was entrusted to him to restore not only the kid's lunch, but he used that to help the kid bless others. It says there were 5,000 men, and not including women and children. And they all ate and were satisfied. And then 12 baskets were collected. I can picture the kid being so shocked. He's like, "Wait, did anyone else give them food?" When you give to God, he will not leave you in need. Don't underestimate the small things that you can give to God, because when you trust him, he will restore you. The third story is the story of Joseph. It's a very long story, so I won't read it, but I'll explain what happens. It's in Genesis. And so Joseph goes through a lot, really. So it starts off, he's like the favorite child, and his brothers hate him. Eventually his brothers sell him off into slavery. He works really hard, and then he becomes the best of all the servants. And then he gets falsely accused of some stuff and thrown into jail. And then 2 other guys get thrown into jail with him. And apparently he's like the best prisoner, so he becomes the head of the prison. Sorry. And then these 2 guys, they are the cupbearer and the baker of the king. So they work for the king. They're now in jail. Not sure what they did. But they both wake up one night and they are freaking out because they had a dream and it scared them. So Joseph, being the man of God he is, he was like, "Okay, tell me your dreams." And they do, and he tells them the meaning, and both their dreams come true, just as Joseph explained. And he was like, "Guys, don't forget me." But of course they forgot him. And so the cupbearer, he went back to work for the king. That was part of the dream. And he had forgotten Joseph, and Joseph could have lost complete hope. But eventually the king has a dream, and no one can interpret it, no one knows what it means, and he's like, oh wait, Joseph. I encourage you to read the story, it's really interesting. But yeah, everyone Joseph had ever cared about turned on him. He's tried his best time and time again, and people keep forgetting him, betraying him, and he was put in prison for something he didn't do. His name was dragged through the dirt, and he was completely alone. In Genesis 41, 39 and 40, it says, "Then Pharaoh said to Joseph, 'Since God has made all this known to you, there is no one so discerning and wise as you. You shall be in charge of my palace, and all my people will submit to your orders. Only with respect to the throne, I will be greater than you.'" He becomes second in charge of all of Egypt. His name is restored. Despite every bad moment where he was ruined, and when he finally did something where people of status noticed him, where he could have cleared his name and proven everyone wrong, he chose to honor and glorify God. It says, he says, I'm just a man, I can't do this, but God will make it known to you. He doesn't even try to say anything like, God will tell me what to tell you. He just straight up, God will tell you. Because he honored God, God honored him, and he restored his name and made him second in charge to Pharaoh. When you trust God, he will restore your name, your reputation, when people try to ruin you. When the world is constantly at every turn trying to bring you down, God will restore you. The movie we watched last time at youth, for those who were here, there was this one line that really touched me. It said, when you are precious to God, you're important to the devil. And it's so true that the devil will try to put lies and titles over you that are just not true. And it's because you are precious to God. The last story is one that's a bit scattered, but it comes from Luke 22. We won't read it because it's a bit everywhere. But it talks about, it's during the time where Jesus is arrested and he's taken to be crucified. Peter is asked 3 times. He's asked, aren't you the guy that's always with Jesus? Aren't you one of them? And he says, no, man, I don't know what you're talking about. I don't know that guy. No. The 3rd time, he said no to this question. The rooster crowed, and he remembers Jesus saying, you will deny me 3 times before the rooster crows, just a couple hours ago. And he becomes so ashamed and so guilty. It says that Jesus turned and looked at him, and it says he just didn't even make it to the cross. It says he went and wept bitterly. He failed in all sense of the word. The thing he was preparing for the last 3 years of his life, walking with Jesus, being bold in his faith, he failed. He was like, how can I face him? I failed him again. And it says he goes back to fishing, which was his original trade. We jump to the very next time that Jesus speaks to Peter in John 21. And it says, they're eating breakfast on the shore after Jesus had risen. And Jesus asked him, Simon Peter, son of Jonah, do you love me? He says, yes, Lord. You know I love you. He says, feed my lambs. Again, he asks him, Simon, son of Jonah, do you love me? He says, yes, Lord, you know I love you. Jesus says, tend my sheep. Then a third time, he says, Simon, son of Jonah, do you love me? Peter's a bit annoyed, but he says, Lord, you know all things. You know I love you. And Jesus says, feed my sheep. Jesus asked him 3 times. And I read this, I always wondered why. Why did he ask him 3 times? And the last time we heard from Peter, he had denied Jesus. He's saying, I don't know him. He said it 3 times. It's almost as if Jesus is saying, I died for you. I died so that you can be restored. Every time you fail, I'm going to be here. I'm going to restore you in full. So Peter, you might be annoyed, but I'm going to ask you again, do you love me? I want to restore every single mistake you made. I'm just not going to restore one. I'm going to restore every single one. I'm taking away your fear and your shame. I love how Jesus calls him by his name. He says, Simon, Peter, son of Jonah. He's reminding him of who he is. You're Simon, son of Jonah, who I called Peter because you are my rock and I will build my church on you. He says, tend my sheep. That's what I called you to do. I didn't call you to be a fisherman. I called you to be a fisher of men. You were scared. You were living in your fear, but I'm calling you out. I'm restoring you to the man I called you to be. You're not small. You're not forgotten. You are not a failure because I have called you by name. He was saying, no one can stop you from being mine, not even you. Peter wasn't planning to come back. He went away. He was just deep in his guilt. And it says Jesus went to his boat. That's where he first met Jesus. Jesus found him and called him back, and he said, follow me. He restored him in full, even when he walked away. I believe God is calling some people out tonight. He's calling you by name. He's saying, do you love me? It's a big question. And he might ask you a few times, but don't get annoyed. He's trying to restore you. Whether it's restoring your financial situation, or it's you think that your need is too big, God will restore you. Whether it's your heart that's been betrayed and you've been forgotten, or your reputation, God will restore you. If it's your mental state, if you're just stuck in your guilt and your shame and you can't get out, God will restore you. He wants to restore your peace. Even if you've failed and you've walked away, He will bring you back to the path that He made for you. He wants to re-establish a relationship with you. It's why He came. It's why He said, no matter what, I want to be in relationship with my children. Whatever you do, it's never too late. Because He wants you as you are. So I just want to go into a time of prayer. If you relate to any of these stories, or you feel like you need to be restored by God, if you want to come back, or if it's your first time to come to God, we want to pray with you. If you come to the front, it's your right to encounter God. It's your right as His child to be immersed by His love. So I encourage you, don't let any fear or embarrassment or fear of judgment to stop you from receiving that, because that is your right. Don't worry about the people around you. Just focus on God because he wants to restore you, and there's nothing that should stop you from receiving his restoration.